In this video, I want to walk you through how to get your AI-generated landing page ready for launch so you can use it for selling, interviews with your prospects, ads, or whatever else you need. If you don't know me, my name is Sean Boyce, and I've spent years building successful SaaS businesses. And I'm now building my next one in public with you to help you succeed by being able to borrow from my process. Subscribe if you don't want to miss a step along the way. Here's where we are in the process. We're on day 6, which will be finalizing our landing page for launch. The previous step, we worked on the first version of our UI, UX design, which we're going to come back to as well. Today, as I mentioned, we're going to get the landing page ready to launch so we can use it to market, interact further with our target market, give them a better idea of the value proposition that we're pursuing, use ads to test it, right? Whatever. All kinds of cool, promising ways that we can move forward with additional validation. Beyond that, we're going to do the same thing with our UI and our UX. So we're going to go back to that. We're going to focus on that tomorrow or as part of the next day or step in this process. Now, if you've missed anything along the way, I've created a playlist for all of the videos that we've created thus far to kind of document this journey. I'll link to that in this video so you can refer back to it if you've missed anything. So why are we doing this step now? Well, like I've mentioned many times, validation early and often is critically important, and our landing page is going to be our most effective way to do that. That is essentially the place where we've captured the essence of everything that we know thus far contextually. You can use this to go back to your target market, folks that you've done interviews with so far, where you found those potential problems we're solving, to give them an idea of how we're putting this story together to see how it resonates. Additionally, we can do all kinds of creative, cool things to test and sell before we build, which is a key part of my process as well, too. Again, the biggest risk to people trying to do this as in bootstrapped SaaS founders turn their products into successful businesses is we design and build something largely in a vacuum and we haven't tested whether or not that value proposition connects with our target market and can sell, right? It's not just about getting your users to use the product you're building. They need to be able to pay for it as well too if you want to turn it into a successful business. So your landing page is a critically important element for you to be able to do all of this. And we're going to cover all these things as we continue to build together. If you've been following along, you know that I used a combination of both Claude and Lovable to design and create the landing page. In order to tweak it and get it ready for launch, we're probably just going to stick with Lovable. So let's dive in and take a look. Let me walk you through the changes that I'm going to request Lovable should make based on my in-depth review of my landing page that we're going to do together in order to get the landing page ready for launch. Now, I've moved myself up here to the top left-hand corner so that you can see both the landing page and the most relevant element of the chat history that I'm going to use natural language in interacting with Lovable to provide this feedback. But in the text box down below that I've already populated, in here, I've got the requested changes that I want to make from the landing page. And I'm going to go through the landing page as I correlate back and forth for you. Should go in order from top to bottom. The first one that I have identified, and you're going to see this frequently, the more you leverage AI for writing your copy. For whatever reason, all the AI models, and I'm just going to highlight one here, right here, if you can see my highlighted section in the hero portion of the landing page, this dash here, which looks like two dashes connected, they're calling them M dashes. That is something that AI is like obsessed with. So you will find these everywhere in copy written by AI. From my perspective, it's a dead giveaway that you used AI, so I remove them as much as possible. I also kind of just don't like them. I'll replace them with commas or parentheses or something that's more likely to be seen written by a human. So that's the first thing that I flag and I say, just get rid of all those first and foremost. The other element that I notice as well too, and I'm going to bounce through the page here just so you can see, but as I'm going through these various sections, like already, I don't see enough call to action buttons and I want more of those. So now I'm going to give it a relatively generic description here for what I'm looking for. Basically just add more. Typically from time to time, I'll get more detailed or less detailed. But again, when it comes to design, sometimes I want to let the designer, which in this case is Lovable for me, I'm recommending it be for you as well too. I want to see what they do. They may change some language on some buttons. They may put them in some sections and not others. So I'll give it anywhere from the range of like add more to add one in each section, which is not a bad idea either. Because you don't know necessarily when your user, your prospect, as they're reviewing your landing page, when it's going to like connect for them. As soon as that light bulb moment goes off and they've seen enough as they go further down your landing page, you want them to have the next step available. Ideally, just one of those, maximum two, as soon as possible. And that's why I like to add more. Also in here, as I scroll down further, and I'm going to review each of these sections as well too. I think this hero section is fine. I might cut back on the wording just a little bit, but almost everything here I like and I think is ready for prime time or good enough once we tweak those dashes. This second section I really like. I love the headline and I love the story it tells in this bulleted list all the way down, especially down to reclaiming your evenings. A lot of my target market, which again is lawyers and law firms, partners and things like that that do a lot of work during the day that don't necessarily have a good way of tracking that, and they want a way to be able to ideally automate billing and capturing all of that revenue. A lot of them sometimes are doing this after hours when they could be spending time with their families or whatever. So that starts to hit some pretty powerful emotional elements. Coming down even further, something I want to adjust about this section is I think it's a little redundant in it's got 1, 2, and 3, which I think is great. So this is the how it works section. And I like to have a 3-step process for that, but I don't even dislike the other icons that are here. I think they're relevant to what it's describing, but I don't want both. I think it's just too much. So I'm requesting that we remove those other icons and we just keep the 1, 2, and 3 to keep it simple. Sometimes I'll do little stuff too, so you can see that each of these text boxes is not quite the same height vertically. Now I'm looking at it on a shorter screen, but sometimes I'll tweak that stuff as well too, but that's really a little bit nitpicky. The other things in here I think are great. All of these elements down here in terms of what it's promising our app or SaaS is going to be able to do, we can incorporate into our build. And we can also keep there for now until we find out as we're doing interviews with our target market how relevant and important all of it is. And then we can walk some of that back. The integration section here I think is okay, but I like to try to make things symmetrical whenever possible. Maybe it's just my personal preference, but I don't like the poor use of white space and like that first column. It looks empty relative to the second column. So I'll normalize this a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick to just 2 rows in each column throughout this entire section. Scrolling down even further, each of these tiles I think tells a relatively important element of the story, and I want to be able to test. I flirted with the idea of reducing these from 4 to 2. Like the accuracy one, I'm not sure about. The no screenshots taken one, I don't know about either. But until I test, I really don't know. And this is an area where if you're unsure of the change you want to make, just leave it, or better yet, go to your target market and get their perspective, because that's what really matters. And I have to constantly remind myself that that's something you should do as well too, in that it's not about necessarily what we think, it's about what they think. Try to put yourself in that mindset whenever, especially if you're in a position where you're going back and forth between things. Now, these quotes that are placeholders based on the interviews that we've done so far, I like them and I think they look okay aesthetically, but I don't think they're super functional because I think they may be difficult for some people to read. They're a little bit tricky for me to read. The italics is a little bit intense. The font style is a little bit too much. So I don't want anything on here to be difficult for people to read. So part of the feedback I've given as well too is let's make that easier to read. Coming down here into the pricing section, I like this. And you'll notice that if you interact with this here, if you switch back from monthly to annual, jump back to the pricing section. I'll tweak that if it jumps to the top of the page as you're flipping those back and forth, but I think it just refreshed the page. That it adds other stuff under the annual element and it defaults to annual, which I like. It also adds a little bit of an interactive component to the page. I like that too. So I was flirting with the idea of separating these out and just having both prices up there simultaneously, but the tables would probably be the same, so it would add a lot of redundancy. So I'm okay leaving it as is and keeping it a little bit interactive. Looks like switching it back and forth now is not refreshing the page. So I'll test that further, but so far I think that's okay. Okay, and in the FAQ, I've just made a couple of minor changes here, but I think for the most part, these are all pretty good. If you've added this to your page, and I highly recommend that you do, this should be based on your research and where you found potential objections from your target market related to what it is you're marketing to them as a solution. Add that in here as FAQ, and then you can use analytics to see how closely they're looking at some of this stuff. And then there's a lead capture down here as well also. Now, for now, I think this is okay. And if I'm going to run ads with this, which is another piece of content I'll probably produce as well too, because I want to see early if I put this out there in the world and I try to get in front of my target market audience, how effectively can I create conversions, potentially even before I build my product, ideally before I build my product, because that'll give me an idea that once it is built, am I going to be able to create a group of people and attract who I want in order to get into the product, using it and ideally paying for it. Then you'll have a way to kind of capture leads. And that could be as simple as something like this, where you're capturing name and email, or you can go further and you can basically create a mini survey what features are most important to you, which pricing tier interests you, questions you have, like whatever additional context you want to use. If you're driving traffic to and then using your landing page to test those conversions, you can incorporate that as part of this process as well too. Last thing I'll mention is the footer. Now, there are a bunch of links in here making it look like, a fully populated, mature website. Not all of these links are functional yet, however, and we don't have a bunch of these sections. Careers makes no sense because we're not hiring anyone, but it's there. It balances out in terms of the product links, which are under that column, and those are all effective. Those all work. But the company ones, not necessarily, and the legal ones, they're not populated yet either. I think this is probably okay in order for early stage testing, probably not with ads, but okay to go back to your target market and have conversations with. However, before you move forward with ads, and for certain, before you move forward with a product in the market and testing it, you're going to want to populate these things or remove which links are there that don't work, which might pull from your credibility. Oftentimes I'll add an about section to the landing page itself. So I'll just add another section that can reference that. Some of these others will probably go away. Blogs, not too difficult to spin up, but these other two, may or may not make sense. The contact can go right to the lead capture, but careers probably remove that. On the legal side, this is an area where we can leverage AI as well too, but this is another gray area. So I'll caution you. Ideally, what you want to do when you're creating your legal policies, because it's very important for protecting both your customers, your prospects, and you and your company, you ideally want to work with a lawyer to get these created, right? And you want to give them all the context about what you're doing and who you're doing it for and all that kind of stuff. However, having said that, that takes time and costs money. And part of what I'm hoping to help you with is figuring out how we move faster, right? Because that is our key strength. So how do we move faster? How do we try to validate this stuff? And then for which of these can we kind of like backfill later? I think this is probably one of those areas where you can bend the rules a little bit, maybe not break them, because I think it's really important to have these policies. But when I say bend the rules, really what I'm talking about is working with AI to kind of workshop basic policies for each of these needs, because it is important that you have those. So in working with Claude, you can provide it the context needed in order to give you early versions of these. And then once you've done some testing, once you've done some validating, you can go back and you can backfill these, or ideally work with a lawyer to make sure that those are solid. Again, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not giving legal advice. I'm not recommending you move forward and doing any of this kind of stuff without the appropriate policies in place, but you can move a little bit faster and go a little bit further with what AI is capable of today. Okay, so that's the list of changes I'm going to feed into the Lovable tool to update my landing page and get it ready for launch. I'm going to kick that off and then we'll let it do its thing. We'll come back and review the results together. So let me go ahead and fire that off and you'll see Lovable go to work. I'm going to leave this on. I'm going to monitor it. And then once it's ready, we'll review it together. Lovable's done. Let's review the results. Okay, so first I noticed that those M dashes are gone from the top. Fantastic. I hate those things. Let's see. What else did we want to do? This section was good, so we didn't change much there. Great. So it removed the other icons and just kept 1, 2, and 3. I think that's cleaner. Looks a lot better. That's the idea here, right? I think this section looks much better as well also. Plus, we've got additional call to actions, which is great. So what's nice about this is if they see the promise and then they come to the how it works section and they're like, this makes sense. I need this in my life. Immediately, boom, we've got to get started now button right there ready for them. And then the white space, better balanced, all that kind of stuff. That's about as far as I go from a design perspective. I wanted to see what this looked like with those other tiles removed. And I don't know. I don't love it. So I think I'm going to add the other ones back before I launch. So I'll bring that back to the 4 and then I'll actually do some testing, like I mentioned, with the target market. The font style has changed for the quotes. I find this much easier to read, which I think is great. So we're going to stick with that as well too. Looks good. More call to action buttons. Fantastic. Pricing section looks similar. Good. We didn't really have any changes there. Minor changes to the FAQ. So far so good there too. Same there. And then I didn't make any changes to the footer at the moment, but I will before I launch. Part of what I'm going to do is I'm going to work with Claude to kind of workshop some basic policies for me. That's before I go and do ads. For now, I'm going to launch this one. No one's going to know about it, even if it is on a live domain site, because I haven't done anything really to market it yet. And before I do that, I will have those policies in place. But I'm going to use this page now that it's ready to do some testing with my target market. So far, so good with these results. I like what it's produced. I think we're ready to launch this to go back to our target market. Not quite with ads yet. We will need to polish up those policies in order to be ready for that. I want to show you one other thing while we're here. A, how to publish the Lovable site, and B, how to both find and then incorporate a custom domain if you want to hang your landing page off of that, which I would highly recommend. We're going to do that in this case. So in order to publish, first and foremost, literally all you got to do is go to this publish button. And I think you have to publish the project in Lovable before you can add a custom domain anyway. So I'm going to publish this and it's going to be on Lovable's domain. So it won't be custom yet, but we're going to do that as part of a next step. So here, I'm just going to go publish. And that's going to do its thing. That's going to give me a URL, which will be externally accessible from anyone that I share that with. And I can test that as well too. I would highly recommend also you test it across different devices. Lovable's got that built in, and I could show that to you as well also. But we're going to make sure it looks good on everything from a phone to a laptop or a desktop. So it's going to do its thing. Lovable's also incorporated more security reviews as well too, which is great. Because some of these AI tools, especially the design-based ones, are not necessarily the best when it comes to security. They are sometimes introducing vulnerabilities. You really want to be careful about that, but Lovable has done a better job in incorporating some of those checks, in addition to helping you with fixing some of those checks. Now, we're not talking really an app yet. This is just a website and a landing page, so the risk is relatively low, but that's one of the reasons why I'd probably go mostly full custom, so you have more control and can monitor those types of security issues more closely, as well as take action in fixing them. So it's live, it's available. If I just click this link and I open it up another tab, and then I punch that into the URL in order to launch the page, I should see my landing page. Here you can see it in full view, test to make sure everything looks good from this perspective and with this aspect ratio, in addition to those other form factors. So in here in Lovable, I will also show you, now that we've published that, they have this little icon right here that will flip to tablet preview. So if I do that, it should show me what it will look like on a tablet. And I already noticed a couple of things, namely my menu structure on tablet doesn't look great. It's crunched. My button over here has got squirrely. The way it's using the space is just not good. So I'm going to clean that stuff up as well too. So make sure you come in here and do those testing. If you click it again, it should show you what a mobile phone view looks like. And here it looks, I think, quite a bit better already. And it's switched to a different menu style. So it's giving me kind of this drawer slide out hamburger menu style. I'm going to switch to something similar for my tablet style. So this, you're going to want to do this as well too. Sometimes it gets these things, doesn't really center things exactly the way you want them. And you might want to have a unique element to your mobile design as well too. But for sure, before you launch, and especially before you run an ad campaign, if you're going to target these other platforms, you're going to want to make sure that the page looks good in those other form factors as well too. Okay, I promised we'd talk about custom domains and wiring those up as well too. Something else I want to share with you as well too is a favorite tool of mine these days for finding available domain names. I am one that will never pay for a domain name. I don't care how perfect it is for my project. Clockless is the name that I'm thinking of going with, at least for now. Clockless.com has been purchased by someone and they have it up for sale for like $15,000. Cool story, bro. I will never pay more than the bare minimum for any domain. And you can get creative with what it is you want to find, so you don't have to either. But that's a total waste of money, especially at this step in the process. If you haven't turned your app into a successful business and it's not wildly profitable, please don't ever buy what you think is like the perfect domain. I promise you, people don't really care all that much. Just go find a different name, change the name of your product, whatever. It'll save you a fortune. And again, even if my app winds up being wildly successful, I'm still not going to buy that domain name. So under no circumstances am I worried about that. I'll just use something different. But if I punch the name in here to this, leandomainsearch.com is the domain name generator, or really search tool that I'm looking for. My use case here is I want to punch in a word or a couple of words I'm thinking of using for the name for my app, and I want it to tell me what is actually available and what combinations of those that I might want to pull from may want to choose instead if, for example, like the .com domain for the perfect name I've chosen or whatever, what I'm thinking of naming my app for now is unavailable. So in this case, clockless.com is not available. Like I mentioned, that's for sale. There's a bunch of these other ones. I'm not big on using alternative domain names. I would prefer you try to find a relative, okay-ish name that isn't too long or confusing, that is on the .com domain, but it's okay if you find a decent name in a relatively also well-known domain. Just realize most people these days are probably still trying to go to .com. I know people are leveraging .ai a lot more because a lot of these tools are using AI, including ours, but those domains are also more expensive. So again, I try to be very protective with your budget. I try to spend as little as possible until I know how successful this can be. And then I'll think about reinvesting elsewhere. But again, probably won't reinvest in that. So in here, you can see, and it's just basically endless scrolling with all kinds of unique combinations of different names that I might choose for my product. And like one in particular, because I've looked at this list already that I thought was okay, was like Clockless App. So instead of Clockless, it's clocklessapp.com. And it shows you both for whatever reason .blog, but also .com. I'm looking for .com pretty much only. And there are all kinds of options here, like Clockless Tech is another one. That's great. Long story short, what I did, and it's not available now, but you can also do things like this. Like this has been a common pattern that's been developing as well too, is punching in things like action words or whatever, like go clockless, and almost it turns into kind of like a phrase or something that you want your target market to do or something they want to do, which is even better. And I ended up picking up goclockless.com. So that's the domain that I purchased. I have that available. I can wire that up now. So if you want to wire up a custom domain into your landing page, you go back into Publish and Lovable, and then you just come here to Edit Domain or Add Custom Domain, which is really what we want to do. And there's a couple of ways to do that. So if you want to add custom domain, you go here to Connect Domain. You can do so manually via the advanced instructions, or you can just punch in the domain here, which for me is goclockless.com. Connect the domain and it will give you some options. So basically what it will do is it'll enable you to connect with your domain registrar, which for me was Namecheap. I'll walk through those steps in the process to wire it up and then publish it on that domain, or you could do so manually by editing the DNS entries where your domain registrar is, or wherever you're managing DNS, so that it will be live there as well also. So that's it. We have updated our landing page using Lovable and AI in order to get it ready for and then ultimately launch it. I connected my custom domain as well too, which is a super easy step in the process. So feel free to just complete that workflow if you want to do so for your respective landing page. Now, as I mentioned as well, also everything I'm doing here in Building in Public with you, I'm documenting along the way, and I'm creating templated guides for you to follow with your respective SaaS project as well too. So check the link in the description below if you want to access that and then follow along with your respective SaaS product.